Evelyn's knife sliced through roast beef with surgical precision. The dining room hummed with forced family warmth. "Tommy might thrive at Riverside Academy," she suggested gently. Her voice carried grandmother's love wrapped in careful concern. Claire's fork struck china like a gavel-delivering verdict. The sound cut through dinner conversation like glass shattering. "Your opinion doesn't matter," Claire said, voice dripping poison. "This is our family now." The words landed like acid on silk. Evelyn's hands stilled on her napkin. Even 7-year-old Tommy stopped breathing. The chandelier light seemed to dim. Silence pressed against them like burial shroud. Michael studied his wine glass as if it contained salvation. His silence echoed louder than screams. The betrayal cut deeper than Claire's venom. This was her son, her sacrifice, her greatest disappointment. His expensive suit couldn't hide the coward within. The boy who'd once crawled into her bed during storms. "Of course," Evelyn whispered, voice steady despite humiliation. "How presumptuous of me." But something shifted in her tone, not defeat, but recognition. The corporate predator was stirring. Claire had just awakened something dangerous. Michael's face flushed scarlet, but he remained mute. The successful attorney who commanded courtrooms became a child. His moral cowardice was a knife twisting in Evelyn's chest. Each second of silence cutting deeper. She'd raised him alone after his father's sudden death, working double shifts while helping with midnight homework. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar wasted. Claire's manipulation had cost him his integrity. He'd sold his soul for domestic peace. The path of least resistance led straight off a cliff. Evelyn's eyes held his for one devastating moment. He looked away, ashamed but still silent. The wine glass became his shield against accountability. His expensive education hadn't taught him loyalty. 28 years of single motherhood reduced to this. Her son's betrayal cut deeper than any stranger's cruelty. The expensive suit couldn't hide his moral bankruptcy. But Evelyn's expression was changing subtly. The wounded grandmother was disappearing. Something far more dangerous was taking her place. The boardroom predator was remembering how to hunt. And Claire had just made herself prey. This wasn't the first attack. It was simply the bloodiest. Claire had been orchestrating Evelyn's elimination for years. Each humiliation had been a paper cut. Barely noticeable alone, but collectively bleeding her dry. Tonight simply ripped away the bandage, exposing years of festering wounds beneath. Christmas seating with children. It'll be fun. Birthday photos without grandmother. Immediate family only. Funeral whispers about women who can't let go. Social assassination disguised as family dynamics. Each incident calculated to wound and diminish. A systematic campaign of emotional warfare. Claire had been systematically murdering Evelyn's relevance. Death by 1,000 dismissals. Every tradition updated to exclude her input. Her contributions erased with smile-wrapped malice. The pattern was clear now, not random cruelty, but strategic elimination. Claire wanted her erased entirely from family narrative, but erasure required the victim to disappear quietly. Evelyn had never been quiet about anything that mattered. The corporate predator was remembering how to fight, and Claire had no idea what she'd unleashed. In her empty colonial, Evelyn finally shattered. The facade she'd maintained through dinner cracked like ice. She collapsed in her late husband's leather chair. Family photos seemed to mock her maternal devotion. Silence pressed against her like judgment, echoing with ghosts of better times. The tears came in waves, decades of suppressed grief. For the boy who'd once needed her protection. She'd worked 16-hour days while others attended PDA meetings. Sacrificed her retirement for his law school dreams. Every dollar flowing to his future. While her own security crumbled. This house had been filled with laughter once. Now emptiness echoed with memories. Her sacrifice had been reframed as interference. Love transformed into liability she needed to outgrow. But as tears dried, something harder crystallized. The wounded mother was retreating into shadows. The strategic mind that had dismantled corporate competitors was awakening. Claire had no idea what she'd unleashed. Evelyn wiped her eyes and walked to her filing cabinet. Some lessons required documentation. Morning coffee tasted bitter as memories became ammunition. Every sacrifice was transforming into evidence for war. She remembered Michael's law school acceptance letter, his devastated face calculating impossible costs, dreams dying in real time, hope crumbling under financial mathematics. "I'll figure something out," she'd promised. The figuring out had required butchering her financial security. Retirement funds cashed completely. 20 years of savings evaporated. The main vacation home sold to strangers. Second mortgage transforming security into debt. Her future mortgaged for his dreams. She'd worked until 65 instead of retiring at 60. Rebuilding what love had cost while Claire lived in luxury. Without her sacrifice, he'd still be teaching high school. Instead, he commanded six-figure attorney fees. But Claire saw her as dead weight, a burden awaiting disposal. The beautiful irony was suffocating. Their comfortable life existed because Evelyn had bled for it. Every comfort they enjoyed traced back to her sacrifice. And she had documented everything with corporate thoroughness. Evelyn's filing cabinet yielded her nuclear option. Documents most assumed where copies weren't. The deed to Michael's house bore one name, hers. Not Michael Clark. Not Claire Matthews Clark. Just Evelyn Margaret Clark in legal script. The signature that controlled their entire world. She'd promised them a gift as wedding present. Helped with down payments, closing costs, moving expenses. But the title transfer had never actually happened. Initially oversight, then strategic forgetfulness. As Claire's cruelty crystallized into deliberate pattern. While Claire plotted social dominance, her target held the deed. The house they'd remodeled belonged to someone else. Every renovation, every comfort, every security, borrowed. They were tenants who'd never paid rent. Squatters in designer clothing. The woman they'd been systematically abusing owned everything. Their foundation was built on borrowed ground. Corporate warfare had taught her invisible weapons were deadliest. Power hoarded quietly struck without warning. Claire wanted her to stay in her lane. Time to show her who owned the road. At the school concert, Evelyn sat alone. Claire held court among other parents like social queen. She approached with flowers for her grandchildren, hope flickering despite years of rejection. Then heard Claire's voice cutting through applause, each word falling like hammer blows. "The old woman's fading," Claire announced confidently. "Soon this will all be mine anyway." Claire spoke like predator circling wounded prey, calculating value in anticipated corpse. "We're just waiting for nature to take its course." Discussing Evelyn's death as business opportunity. Other mothers shifted uncomfortably at the cruelty. This gossip crossed lines into something darker. Claire spotted Evelyn and showed no embarrassment, only annoyance at being overheard plotting. The casual viciousness was breathtaking. Her continued existence viewed as obstacle to inheritance. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. The flowers crumpled beyond repair. But her mind was calculating with surgical precision. Claire had just provided perfect justification for war. Evelyn spread documents like a general planning siege. Each paper placed with military precision across mahogany. Bank statements showing $180,000 for Michael's education. Wedding expenses totaling $50,000, all from her accounts. House renovations, $25,000 for their comfort. Every generous gesture preserved in legal amber. Michael's financial aid applications listed assets as minimal. Accurate only because she'd hidden her wealth to ensure his eligibility for assistance. Sacrificing her own transparency for his opportunity. The paper trail read like an indictment. Their lifestyle built on her generosity while she endured abuse. Every transaction documented with corporate thoroughness. Evidence for war she had known she was fighting. Her business background was kicking in completely. This wasn't emotional revenge, it was strategic warfare. The dining table became command center. Legal documents transformed into weapons of precision. And Claire was about to learn about consequences. The most devastating kind, documented, legal, irrefutable. Jonathan Reeves reviewed her documents with predatory interest. Two strategic minds recognizing dangerous kinship. You never completed the house transfer deliberately? His eyes gleamed with professional understanding. Strategic forgetfulness. Evelyn smiled like Blade, finding flesh. They have zero legal claim to anything. You could evict them tomorrow morning. But eviction wasn't elegant enough for this situation. I want something more valuable than their homelessness. I want my son back and that woman educated. They crafted language like surgeons designing scalpels. Precise, clean, devastating in its legal beauty. This is chess, not checkers, Jonathan observed. We're reshaping the entire family board. The notice would arrive like earthquake, splitting Claire's world along hidden fault lines. When do we deploy this weapon? When she gives us perfect justification. They were artists creating masterpiece of consequence. And Clare would provide the final brushstroke herself. The legal notice was crafted like surgical weapon. Every word weighted for maximum psychological impact. Requirements that appeared reasonable but delivered devastation. Written acknowledgement of Evelyn's complete ownership. Formal agreement specifying respectful treatment. Basic human courtesy, or 30 days to vacate. The beauty is these requirements are entirely reasonable. Any court would consider them basic human decency. Claire's resistance would look petty and vindictive, while her compliance would taste like swallowed glass. The alternative was formal eviction proceedings. Credit destruction, social humiliation, children scattered from schools. She wanted you to stay in your lane. Time to show her who built the road. The envelope would detonate Claire's comfortable certainties, revealing foundation of sand beneath her castle. When she gives us perfect justification, Jonathan smiled. And based on her pattern, that won't take long. The trap was set with legal precision. Clare would walk into it willingly. Sunday dinner provided the perfect stage. Evelyn brought apple pie, ammunition disguised as affection. Perhaps we could visit the Science Museum together? Calculated bait to trigger Claire's territorial instincts. The suggestion was innocent enough on surface, but designed to provoke predictable cruelty. Claire struck with venom-wrapped confidence. Your opinion doesn't matter. Stay in your lane. The children looked down at their plates. Michael's silence echoed like moral bankruptcy. Evelyn smiled like cat sizing up plump canary. We'll see about that. Claire rolled her eyes with contempt. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, dear. Just an old woman's silly thoughts. But atmospheric pressure was dropping dangerously. Everyone felt the electricity of coming storms. The game had changed completely, and Claire hadn't even realized they'd been playing. She'd just given Evelyn perfect justification for war. Evelyn became serenity itself, helping with dishes, reading bedtime stories as if nothing shifted. But something fundamental had changed, like tectonic plates sliding into new positions. Her movements carried different energy now. Predator, who'd finally decided to hunt. Michael walked her to the car, nervous energy radiating. Mom, Claire didn't mean to. Oh, she meant every single word. Evelyn's voice carried undertones of sharpened razors. I've learned to appreciate her brutal honesty. The pleasant facade masked awakened hunter. Good night, sweetheart. Give my love to your family. She paused, engine purring like satisfied cat. All of it, she added with meaningful emphasis. The words carried weight he couldn't yet understand. He watched her drive away, suddenly alone. Understanding with dawning horror what was coming. He'd been living in House of Cards, while his mother held matches and gasoline. Chapter 13, The Envelope Sent. Jonathan delivered the notice, Wednesday morning. Claire would be alone, isolated, completely vulnerable. The manila envelope landed like ticking bomb. Legal notice, immediate attention required. Evelyn tended roses with meditative precision. Each cut deliberate, necessary, transformative like surgery. Her phone began ringing at 2:47 p.m. 6 rings, then 8, then full voicemail capacity. She could picture Claire's growing panic perfectly. Legal notice growing heavier with each failed connection. The roses responded beautifully to careful pruning. Like family relationships, harsh intervention enabled healthy growth. Her hands were earth-stained but steady, finding zen while Claire's world crumbled. The timing was absolutely perfect. Hours alone with devastating news. Hours to comprehend the scope of miscalculation. Hours to understand every comfort had been borrowed from someone she'd systematically abused with casual cruelty. The irony was suffocating in its completeness. Claire's hands trembled as nightmare crystallized. The envelope had seemed innocuous, routine property paperwork. Instead, it contained documentation of existential collapse. Legal language dense, but meaning crystal clear. Property owned solely by Evelyn Margaret Clark. Current occupants residing without formal lease agreement. Everything she'd built belonged to someone else. Someone she'd dismissed as a relevant obstacle to inheritance. The attached documents proved everything with devastating precision. Deed, bank records, transfer statements, financial history. Her entire identity was built on borrowed foundation. While she'd been systematically abusing the lender, they were squatters in expensive clothing. Tenants who'd never paid $1 in rent. Michael was unreachable in court arguing corporate cases. While their domestic reality exploded into legal shrapnel, the comfortable certainties of mourning had evaporated, leaving stark recognition of costliest mistake imaginable. She dismissed the wrong person's opinion, and now payment was coming due with compound interest. Chapter 15, The Meltdown. Michael found Claire pacing like caged predator. Legal papers scattered like explosive shrapnel across furniture. "Did you know your mother owns our house?" Her voice pitched at crystal-shattering frequency. His face drained as comfortable assumptions crumbled. "She said she was giving it to us. She never signed it over. We're squatters." But it wasn't their house, never had been. They'd been living in borrowed space, building futures on someone else's property. "Call her. Fix this immediately." But Evelyn's phone remained ominously silent. The woman who'd always solved his problems was suddenly unreachable when he needed her most. For the first time in his adult life, his mother wasn't rescuing him from consequences, and he was finally understanding why. The bill for his cowardice had come due. His expensive education hadn't taught him about loyalty, but he was about to learn everything. Claire attacked Evelyn's door like battering ram. Fury stripping away carefully maintained designer veneer. Evelyn answered dressed for charity luncheon. The contrast was devastating. Elegance facing unhinged barbarism. Cut the act. "What is this?" Claire pushed inside with barely controlled violence. "Documentation, dear. Something you apparently struggle with." Evelyn closed the door with quiet finality. Her kitchen became impromptu throne room. Evidence laid out like royal decrees of judgment. "You said my opinion didn't matter." Coffee poured into delicate china with steady hands. "But my signature does matter quite significantly." Voice carrying undertones of satisfied predator finally revealing teeth. "And it appears on everything that matters to you." The beautiful irony was absolutely suffocating. While Claire plotted social dominance, Evelyn held nuclear option. The deed, the payments, the financial control. "This is education," she purred with dangerous satisfaction. "Class is now in session, dear." Michael arrived looking like man facing execution. Cancelled morning meetings to contain Claire's escalating threats. "Mom, please. We can work this out." The successful attorney became terrified child begging mercy. "Your wife made my irrelevance abundantly clear." Evelyn gestured to chair like queen granting audience. "I'm simply adjusting my involvement accordingly." Her voice carried boardroom authority that made men tremble. "This is my house, bought with my money, secured by my signature and legal documentation." He sat heavily, implications cascading like falling dominoes. Every comfort traced back to her sacrifice. "What do you want from us?" His hands shaking with dawning recognition. "I want my son back, Michael." Voice softening with genuine pain beneath strategic anger. "The boy who used to defend me. Who understood loyalty flows both directions in families." The moral mathematics were absolutely devastating. and he finally understood the equation he'd been avoiding. Word spread like wildfire through dry grass. Small town's gossip network carrying delicious news efficiently. The meek grandmother who'd quietly owned everything. Arrogant daughter-in-law learning about real consequences. At the grocery store, women nodded approval. Always knew that girl had it coming eventually. The bank manager smiled with knowing satisfaction. He'd handled Evelyn's accounts for 20 years. Claire found herself drowning in pointed whispers. Social climbing meant much longer falls when you tumbled. Hardware store clerk mentioned with casual precision. Mrs. Clark's grandmother seems absolutely lovely woman. Everyone knew who actually cared about family welfare. The implication hung heavy in small-town air. Even the mailman noticed unusual tension. Legal correspondence suggesting serious domestic warfare. Small towns have long memories for social dynamics. Claire was learning about very public education. The community had become Greek chorus to her downfall. Commenting on justice served with quiet satisfaction. The same women who'd heard her complaints were watching. Her public humiliation with barely concealed satisfaction. Jonathan's terms were surgeon precise in their clarity. Respectful treatment or 30 days to vacate premises. The office felt like war crimes tribunal. Legal authority facing increasingly desperate defendant. You're blackmailing us, Claire accused with animal desperation. Voice carrying cornered predator's fear. I'm offering choice, Evelyn replied with devastating calm. Serenity making threats more terrifying than screaming. Accept your place or find yourself outside it. Beautiful symmetry of poetic justice. The terms were elegantly simple in their requirements. Written acknowledgement, formal respect, basic human courtesy. Market rate runs $4,000 monthly for this neighborhood. Assuming landlords accept recent eviction history. Michael sat between them like torn Switzerland. His moral cowardice had enabled this entire crisis. The choice was devastatingly clear and final. Respect or homelessness, courtesy or complete social destruction. The ultimatum hung in air like sword of Damocles. Claire could feel its weight pressing down. Claire's face was stone, but her hands shook. The queen of social climbing was learning about gravity. Tommy and Sarah overheard through thin bedroom walls. Adult fury they couldn't comprehend but could feel. Are we losing our house? 8-year-old voice terrified by incomprehensible warfare. They called Evelyn themselves, children's intuition working. Recognizing grandmother might have answers parents couldn't provide. Did we do something wrong, Grandma? 7-year-old voice, shaking with confusion and guilt. The words hit like physical blows to chest. Innocent voices carrying undeserved burden of adult warfare. She drove over immediately, without hesitation. Climbing into treehouse sanctuary they'd built. You did nothing wrong, sweethearts. Holding them while calculating protection strategies carefully. Their trust was both powerful weapon and moral limitation. Reminding her why this battle had started. I promised to try my very best. Children's love was worth more than any revenge. The innocence in their eyes refocused her mission. This war was about protecting them, not punishing Claire. Their tears proved her point about family importance, while challenging her methods simultaneously. Claire's surrender tasted like swallowed broken glass. Each forced courtesy burning her throat raw. What do you think about summer camp options? Words extracted through legal threat rather than respect. The question cost her visibly in pride. Jaw clenched, hands fisted beneath table, eyes burning. Survival instincts had finally overridden massive ego. Respect wasn't optional when someone held your existence. Evelyn recognized elaborate performance art clearly. Submission rather than genuine conversion of heart. But it was movement, grudging, painful forward movement, toward basic human decency and family respect. The children's relief was palpable in atmosphere. Years of crushing tension finally beginning to lift. Rome wasn't built in a single day. Neither was reconstructed respect between enemies. Each forced courtesy was step toward reformation. Claire learning that power came with conditions. The transformation was glacially slow but undeniable. pride bending beneath weight of consequences. Clare was learning life's costliest lesson. Dismissing worth carried precisely calculated consequences. 3 months later, final act in family drama. Evelyn's will updated with surgical legal precision. The conference room felt like formal courtroom. Final verdict about futures was being delivered. House remains mine until death occurs. Then transfers to grandchildren in protective trust. Clare's hands shook as implications crystallized completely. Inheritance assumptions evaporating like summer heat. All assets structured around blood relationships exclusively. Marriage lines meant nothing without demonstrated respect. What about Clare? Michael asked carefully. Reviewing documents, redefining their entire future. Clare made her family feelings abundantly clear. Calm judgment more devastating than explosive anger. I'm simply honoring her stated preference for independence. The will was a sophisticated educational tool, teaching lasting lessons about dignity across generations, about consequences echoing through family history permanently. The document was Evelyn's final strategic masterpiece, engineering behavior change from beyond the grave. Clare would inherit nothing but hard-earned knowledge, that opinions carry weight proportional to respect given. Parking lot became Clare's personal hell on earth. Every comfort had been borrowed from someone else. Years spent dismissing the woman who controlled everything, while building identity around inheritance never guaranteed. She played me completely, Clare told Michael. Ice water recognition flooding her veins. Played helpless grandmother while holding every crucial card. Strategic brilliance versus her complete blindness. She'd been fighting absolutely unwinnable war. Attacking foundation of her own comfortable existence. She tried to include you, Michael said quietly. Finally spoken truth burning like acid. Every dismissed opinion, interrupted conversation, casual humiliation. Systematic attacks on person controlling their future. Comfortable justifications were crumbling like sand castles. Gravity was utterly unforgiving to the foolish. When you attacked your own foundation deliberately, the fall was always completely fatal. The irony was suffocating in its completeness. She'd been her own architect of destruction. Her miscalculation wasn't just strategic, it was existential. She destroyed herself with her own cruelty. Family dinners transformed like gradually changing seasons. Subtle atmospheric pressure shifts over careful time. Clare's questions became habitual courtesy rather than force. Not warm perhaps, but genuinely respectful acknowledgement. When Tommy struggled with science homework difficulties, Clare actually suggested calling grandmother Evelyn first. Vacation planning consulted her schedule before making decisions. Understanding inclusion wasn't courtesy, but absolute necessity. Evelyn's place was acknowledged authority now. Her opinions actively sought rather than dismissed. The transformation proved her strategic genius completely. Behavioral modification rather than destructive bloodshed. Michael's relief was palpable in family atmosphere. Years of domestic warfare finally ended. Christmas dinner featured unprecedented moment of grace. Clare asking Evelyn to say blessing. The victory was absolutely complete and total. Not through conquest, but through patient education. Family dynamics had been permanently restructured. Power redistributed based on earned respect. Evelyn's opinion finally mattered to everyone, because she'd proven it was worth having. 5 years later, Evelyn passed peacefully. Death as perfectly timed final curtain call. The funeral overflowed with evidence of worth. Her true impact finally visible to all. Will reading delivered final educational moment. Grandmother's china to Clare, elegant reminder of expectations. At reception, Clare watched lawyers explain trusts. Understanding weight of previously dismissed opinions. Evelyn's final note to beloved grandchildren. Every opinion matters when it comes from love. Clare folded it carefully into her purse. The last opinion she'd ever offer. And finally, she was truly listening. The old woman's revenge was absolutely complete. Not through cruelty, but through measured consequence. Not destruction, but sophisticated education. She taught them all about dangerous miscalculations. that dismissing worth was costliest gamble imaginable. The lesson would echo through generations. Respect earned through sacrifice mattered more than respect demanded. Some lessons were worth everything they cost. Some opinions carried the full weight of empires.